On today's episode of the Sales Factor podcast, we have none other than Alex Bellon. He is an established sales leader. He is the go-to market consultant for sales technology. Now, he's helped companies ranging from 1 million to 200 million ARR. He's helped them shape their product, their services, really helping them go to market, creating the sales strategy so that everyone can achieve the goals and achieve success. He's a phenomenal guy, a wealth of information, and I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope you take something out of it that you can apply to your own business. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Alex,
Aaron,
what is the biggest challenge that you're finding right now in sales?
so it's a good question. I think there's definitely more than one. Uh, it's definitely a fact to say that the environment that everyone's kind of working in at the moment is changing. From an economic perspective, I think a lot of people are going to find challenges, not just in from a budgetary sense from their clients, but also a lot of companies just in general will find from an operational standpoint in sales, they're going to have a challenge because of funding issues, um,
Mm,
particularly VC backed type businesses. So really from all angles, as is the case in, as business cycles, move on, there's going to be challenges with funding, with budgets from your clients, but also with changing priorities as well. So, imagine you're approaching your clients with a proposition, whatever it might be. What works when they're doing well might not work when they're not doing so well. So if the priority of your client all of a sudden changes to cutting costs, telling them, here's our solution, it makes your life easy, isn't going to be probably as much on their radar as something that's going to be positioned as an efficiency gain, which is going to reduce their costs, which is going to be much more of
mm.
a priority at a time like that, particularly if they're facing, laying off staff and other things anyway as well. So, just I think in general, the biggest pressures at the moment are not necessarily going to come, well, for a variety of businesses, are not going to come from the inside. They're going to come from the outside.
Yeah.
And it's how you adjust to those going forward that's really going to define whether you succeed in this climate or not. And by the way, it is possible to succeed during a recession. Um, there are huge winners in recessions. It's just a case of, are you able to adapt and be one of those, or are you going to keep doing something that you've been doing just because you used to do it
Mm.
this way, and then suffer through it? So does that make sense? I think that's quite a
Yeah, no, absolutely.
yeah,
No, great. And you took me right back to COVID.
yeah,
So I think, as we all know, I'm sure you're listening to it now. Thinking back to COVID times, like people had to adapt quick. We were chucked in the deep end, and things need to change rapid, not just from like working in the office to going home, but like actually yourselves, because again, budgets were cut, people not hiring, people not spending money. So it gets to the point where it's like, okay, well, we have to pivot, we have to change and do something a little bit differently. And I found that this is all around where like personal branding and that sort of stuff came around. And I mean, it was about, but really the people who doubled down on personal branding and visibility outside, coming out the other end of COVID, they're flying. They're absolutely
yeah,
flying. But I really liked your point that you said there about, in a market where everyone's got money, they're spending, they've, come up the financial year, they've got X amount of money to spend. Your is going to be different because people are willing to spend money. But what you mentioned there was on the flip side, when people have got the gates up, the doors closed, and they're not spending money, then how do you actually sell? Like,
Well, it's a really interesting point, because I think, people in sales, they often focus on, how do I move whatever product it is that I've got, right? But in reality, it's one of these. I don't know if you heard the term product before profit, right? So it's this idea that if you focus so much on actually pushing a product, it will never really move. It will move if you focus on actually doing something for your clients. So if you understand what their priority is, understand what their problem is, understand their business, understand what they face, and try to help them solve it.
yeah,
If you can do that with your product, of course, then that's what you're there to do. But it's not called consultative selling for no reason, right? You're trying to, if you focus on them and try and help them really achieve what they're trying to achieve, it will just happen. Because ultimately, sales is not really about showing someone something or trying to push them to pay for something. It's about presenting what you have in a way that helps them actually solve something that they're trying to solve, or improve something that they're trying to improve. So
Mm.
and that's the crucial point, is what is that thing, what is that thing that they're trying to improve, what are they trying to achieve? And this goes back to my first point, which is that will be different at different times, and that will be different for different companies. So
Mm.
knowing your client, knowing what they're trying to do, knowing the environment they're in. COVID's a great example, right? I mean, you could see a clear line between
Mm.
different types of companies. So there were those that sort of kept doing what they were doing, told everyone to go home, and furloughed half their staff.
Yeah.
And just sort of, let's ride this out. It will go back to normal. Well, we all thought 3 months. It ended up being 3 years. In most
Yeah,
cases.
man.
So that doesn't work, and you might be waiting a lot longer than you thought, and kind of bleeding capital while you're doing so. So whereas the other group looked at the situation and said, okay, well, you know what we were discussing with clients before, that's no longer on the radar. They're in a different world. Well, what is on the radar now? So I give you an interesting example, actually. So just looking at
Sure.
restaurants, and I know this is not SaaS services or technology, which I guess is what we've spoken about much before, but it's a great example for adaptation, which is that the businesses that survived, developed an app and started doing deliveries. Those that shut down and waited to reopen, many of them haven't. So
Mm.
there's your example. It's can you kind of smell the coffee of what's going on and change. But just to bring that back into sort of a sales environment, it's really boils down to, what are your clients prioritizing now, and can you do something for them there? And when I say do something, I don't mean kind of shoehorn in your product and try and push
Yeah.
them to buy something they don't want. I mean, can you genuinely address some sort of problem for them? If your product is based around, if you were saying in 2018, 2019, and here's what we do, it's going to make your daily life much easier, it's going to automate things. Well, yes, it will make your life easier, but when you think about it from a different lens, it also really makes your business more efficient, because your staff have more time. So
Mm.
it's the same solution. It achieves the same thing for a business, but ultimately, if you then say, well, guys, we understand efficiency is more important to you now, we can deliver that efficiency. We
Yeah.
can reduce your costs and increase your productivity at a time when you're struggling and your costs are going up all over the place anyway. So let's reduce that for you, at least in this aspect. Does that sound interesting? Well, it will sound much more interesting than, look, we're going to give you an hour back in your day. You can have more coffee, or go for a longer lunch, or whatever. Which
I
might
do
have
love
sounded
coffee.
great during great times of whichever boom, but
Yeah.
when things are difficult and when the priorities change, it's
Mm.
the same solution. It just enables them to do a different thing. So, but again, you're thinking about what's important to them. So you're saying you're actually solving their problem, and that's the key point to the takeaway here is. Yes, you've got to be flexible. Yes, you've got to adapt. But ultimately, if you're not understanding what's important to your client and you're not really focused on actually helping them,
Mm.
it's not going to work for you in either environment. So,
Yeah.
uh, so there's got to be that genuine, and this all comes from, like, is there a genuine care about what your clients
What
are
you
doing?
do.
Aligned, obviously, with an understanding of what they're doing as well.
Yeah, like ramming products down people's throats, and I mean, I suppose like at a high level, there's two real levers that people can sell on, right? Reducing the time, like for efficiency and productivity, fine, or doubling, tripling, quadrupling ROI. That's really the only real levers that people are going to buy your product. If they can see the true value in it, that's going to either save them time, make them more efficient, and so they can free up time to do something else, or even in the environment now, everyone like money into the business, like sales are so crucial. So if there is a product out there that can enable them to, win more business or do more deals or whatever it may be, then you're much more likely. But then the caveat to that is not ramming it down the throat. Oh, we can save you loads of time, or we can double. I think it's coming back to what you said: is understand the customers and really doing discovery with them. Like you don't
Absolutely.
necessarily need to like dive in, go get everyone on the call, let's do the deal quick. Because I think when people understand how your product or service can help, then they're much more likely to buy. So with that, then, if you take that approach of really understanding your customer, caring about it, not ramming the product down someone's throat. Like, what have you found that works to get that stage? Because I imagine there'll be SDRs or BDRs going out there trying to drum up conversations and stuff, and it can look like we're just trying to do deals and stuff like that. So, how do people get to that stage where they can find out information and really, open up that car bonnet to really get to the nitty gritty of, I suppose, data
Yeah.
from the customers
So
to be able to.
it's a really good question, and I think you first of all, the kind of person that's going about this needs to have a genuine curiosity about the business of the client, or
Yeah.
the prospect in this case. But if you can understand their industry, and you know kind of roughly what their issues might be, you're in a position that's a bit stronger to actually start having a serious conversation about what are they specifically facing, and how can you help them. I think it really depends on where the first interaction comes from. I mean, if somebody approaches your business and says, look, here's my problem, I'm running a tender, then you need to be super focused on, well, how are we solving this problem, how can we help them do that,
Mm,
and go from there. But if, for example, if you meet somebody in an industry that you're servicing at an event, and you're just talking, then, well, in reality, finding an opportunity to help them, which is really what opportunities are. It's a chance for you to do something for your client that's going to deliver value to them. It doesn't start by saying, by the way, Aaron, nice to meet you. I'm Alex. Have you looked at my products? Right? It doesn't start that
yeah.
way. It's not about that. So that's an example of what not to do by sort of shoveling what you've got, basically, so to
Yeah.
speak. So really, if I have that genuine curiosity, if I genuinely care about solving problems for you, or potentially for you, my question should be, well, Aaron, what's your business doing? What are you in? Where are you going? And what are you facing? And by the way, if I can show you something that I've done for somebody else that's in your space, one of your peers, potentially, would you be interested in taking a look, having evaluate what we've done for them and see if it would be of interest to you? So it really kind of striking up these conversations, and is really about, can I help you? And is there something, I'm giving you something. I want to give you an example. I want to give you a validation of some sort of
Mm,
my previous work, right? I mean, it's almost, I liken it kind of to, if you were to take a graphic designer for something,
mm,
you'd want to see what they've done. So, and they wouldn't turn up to a conversation and say, great, I'll draw this for you. They would say, well, look, let me show you some of the work I've done, and and go from there. So it's
mm.
really genuine care about what they're doing, and just an inherent inquisitiveness, or interest in their business and their challenges, a willingness to share validate your capabilities, and a willingness to share
Mm.
those case studies that you've already achieved, and then going from there, really. So I think in order to understand what works with this, it's great to understand what doesn't, which is, look at my demo, or let me show you my product, and don't come in with a I'm selling, because really, again, this is the point. Good sales is not selling, it's helping. So
Yeah.
so it's solving problems, and delivering value. It's not pushing something people don't want. So
Yeah.
yeah, understanding their business as well. I mean, caring and understanding their business.
And that can be done in a multitude of ways. And what I mean by that is, yes, you've got case studies. Yes, you've got people that you've helped that are similar to them and they can see the relevance and how it can help them. And that's great. But I think the first stage, and do correct me if I'm wrong or if you've got another take on this, but is piquing their interest. Now
Mm.
that's driven from, I suppose, market research. Like, how much do you know about the company? Understanding if you're working with a similar company to them, they're probably likely going to go through similar problems and challenges. So potentially your first email, your first outreach can, like, it doesn't need to be a big, because I get them all the time. I get emails and it's like I scan through it real quick and then delete. Like, I don't sit there and read it. I don't click on any links. or anything like that. But if someone sent me like a literally 1 to 2 line, hey, you know, saw you're in recruitment and you're doing this, that, and the other. Like I'm working with someone else and they've actually scaled their business in 6 months and increased their ROI by 300% by doing this one simple thing that I'd love to show you. Like, it's like, okay, cool. That's
Yeah.
driven on me getting more ROI. But again, it depends on the product and service and your
Yeah,
ICP
I mean,
going.
I think it also depends on what your business is trying to achieve. So if you look
Sure.
at your business as a an account-based approach, and you say,
Mm,
okay, here's what we do. We are going to specialize in this, and we want to go after whichever companies are on our target list. Um, it's going to be a little bit different to if you're just saying, well, let's go out to the wider world. Here's what we do. Whoever's interested, we're going to have a conversation with them. So you can absolutely go out to people and say, look, here's what I'm best at. If you need this, let me know. Right, which is that,
mm,
that approach. Here's my I can do this for you. Here's
mhm,
what I can help you with. If it applies, you let me know and we'll have a conversation. Or if you're very keen to work with certain businesses, you can approach them, and and it's more of a general conversation then, because hitting them with something like that might not be what they need at that time. So that's where
mm,
more of a conversation is needed. So I think that to take a step back from really your question, the first question is, who do you want to deal with, and what do you want to be doing? Because if you want to be dealing with a certain number of organizations, you really want to work with them, you're interested in working with them, then you need to approach things with an open mind, and
mm,
really about finding a use case that you can help them with. Whereas if you are just going to do a certain thing, or a specialization is your area, and that's what you're going to stick to, then go out to the wider world and say, look, I do this. Are you interested in working with me? Let me know. So it's interesting, but certainly, again, regardless of what you do, you got to remember you're there as a business to solve a problem and deliver value to your
mm.
client. So you need to genuinely understand them and care about what they're trying to achieve, in order to do
Yeah.
that. So
And that's the first step, right? The first step's always the hardest one to get your foot through the door. I think after that, then not necessarily it's easy, but it's easier to obtain the information that you need
yeah,
through the conversation, and then obviously you can dig into the data and the problems and stuff, and really unpack and really get down to the nitty gritty of where potentially you can solve problems or give them a solution.
yeah,
Do you think it's because it's all great and well saying that, but coming back to the very first point that we were talking about, the economic environment that we're in now, recession, if you want to call it, like
mm,
I think in the back of your mind, you got to look at like people's psychology, like your
yeah.
prospect psychology, or their priorities. So, what should people be thinking about? Say, great, this sounds good. I'm going to go try it. But what also should they be thinking about from a psychology point of view or potential, like your
Yeah,
customers' priorities right now?
absolutely. It's a great question. I mean, so the psychology really of there's two levels to look at this, and there's their attitude towards the market will be driven by what their key business goals are. So if we're in a recession, they're tight on revenue, things are getting difficult. Um, they're not going to their psychology will just naturally reflect a lack of interest in sort of nice to haves, really. And they'll prioritize on what's key in aligning with those goals. So again, what we talked about, understand those goals, understand the environment they're in, what they're facing. But there's a deeper part to this, which I think is sort of, you know, there's the psychology of your clients, but there's also your psychology if you're in this business, which is, so there's a lot of rejection in sales, and a lot of people kind of can get quite negative by that. Well, yeah.
Oh,
Um, so,
of
so,
course.
you have to be pretty sort of objective and persevere. But you need to understand that um, that negativity sometimes can come through, and there's a risk for certain organizations, and I've seen this quite a lot with consulting clients, is that once people you focus so much on well, we're doing XYZ, that people overlook the fact that actually you might have somebody with a lot of talent in your organization that is doing the right stuff, but just because they've had sort of a few negative responses with some of their clients, that they start to become sort of a little bit negative themselves, and you may have exactly the right solution for a client, but if it's coming across in a negative way from that person, that may not foster the right atmosphere in order to actually allow for even a proper review of your solution. So,
Mm,
so I think psychology, very broad term,
sure.
very many aspects of it when it comes to sort of business relationships, but certainly understand your client psychology. It will make a lot more sense when you understand what they're going through. So again,
Yeah.
this goes back to discovery, what we talked about, but also understand your psychology. I mean, if you, just because perhaps certain clients, particularly in a recession, if one of your clients has cancelled because they don't have budget, don't be negative, right? I mean, that's the world. That's how it goes. So understand that you've got to be positive, because that doesn't mean that you won't be able to help somebody else,
Yeah.
in that sense. And so I'll give you an example, right? If you went into a car showroom and that a car is great, if you ask the guy there, what do you think, and he just sort of deadpan face says, yeah, it's okay. Well, that wouldn't really inspire a lot of confidence. You just
No, it wouldn't.
on something. So you want to be sure, right? And
Yeah.
definitely, don't get me wrong, you'll take it for a test drive, you'll look under the hood, you'll read the spec online and all the reviews, and that will give you the data driven confidence. But you don't want, it doesn't really create a let's say an optimism on your part if the guy that you speak to that actually represents the company isn't themselves first of all interested, but also positive. And lack of
Okay.
positivity can come across as a lack of interest or confidence. So that's something to bear in mind. But
Yeah.
ultimately, I think, because we're talking about this in a sort of recession context, or
Yep.
negative economic climate and uncertainty context, you know, understand your clients are going through that. So what does that mean for your business? Well, number one, probably you're going to need to do a bit more than just tell your team we're going to have to put some extra hours in, because that's not enough. You need to understand that yes, it's going to be more work, and that there'll probably be more hoops to jump through, because everyone's going to want to be more sure about their commitments. But accept that and understand it and facilitate for it, rather than getting frustrated, because that's not be beneficial to the relationship. But also understand that because the priorities have changed, perhaps certain aspects of your product will be more interesting now than they previously were. So it depends on your service. So just, understand that and, adapt for it, because ultimately it all goes back to that same point. You're there to help them, as a priority, and that will lead to a fruitful relationship if you do that well. So understand what helping them looks like, and it may be different now than it was perhaps 3-4 months ago, or even a year ago.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think it's transfer of energy, right? People would say I'm quite energetic. Sometimes a bit all over. That's just the coffee, really. but but
Yeah,
but if you're a salesperson, you're not excited about your product and what it can do for people. That's going to come across, and
of course.
people will pick up on that for sure. Like I love what I do, and helping people change careers or helping people fulfill their career goals and push on, and some of the clients I work with are phenomenal. Like really, I've like sometimes I've even crossed my mind like, oh, if I went back into sales, i.e. tech sales, maybe I'd go work for them. Like they're cool
Yeah,
companies to work for.
yeah,
And the other point you made there about like, yeah, if you do speak to someone and yeah, they don't have budget, fine. Like that doesn't mean that deal is completely dead in the water. It's like, okay, cool. Well, maybe in 3 months, 6 months, things turn around, things start changing, people start spending money, the confidence of the economy rises up, everyone's back into it. Similar to like last year when we came out
mm,
of COVID, like everyone, boom, 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 everyone's on it. Um, like that you've then digested that initial conversation with that client as an ICP of someone who's potentially interested in your product, just doesn't have the money there and then.
yeah,
So then it's like, okay, I know we're going off piece now, but then okay, what is your process to then nurture that lead over time? Keep
yeah,
giving them value. Keep saying, hey, try this, try that. Here, I found this with one other client. They tried this. Maybe that can help you, whatever it may be. But keep them forefront of their mind so that when they are ready to buy, then they're equipped with more information. Then the sale should be easier to go
yeah.
through.
I mean, there's a tendency in amongst sort of the sales community, I guess, to sort of dehumanize this whole process, right? So we say, oh, it's a lead, it's an opportunity. It's not. It's a group of people that have a different business that you're trying to form a business relationship with.
Hmm.
So, yes, the time might not be right, but that doesn't mean, okay, well, this lead, cancel, put it in the bin.
Yeah.
That's a group of people that you now have a relationship with, and maybe you couldn't help them today, but you can help them in the future. If you take this approach that actually you're just going out into the world and helping other people, and doing so in a commercial fashion, or albeit, but if you take that approach and you start looking at things this way, and instead of looking at, if somebody says no to you, okay, we haven't got budget, we're not doing it now. Instead of looking at that from a sort of a numbers game fashion and going, okay, dead, that's delete, yeah, as if it was some sort of line of text on a page. Well, that undermines the work, the relationship that you've built, which may well, as you say, in the future, if you've now um, explained who you are, what you do, you've formed a relationship, people will think of you. So
Mm.
when the time comes, when it's right, then you can reinvigorate that conversation, and definitely find a potentially, albeit maybe a different use case, that
Yeah.
you can help them with there. So yeah, I mean, it's a this is probably one of the more human aspects of business, I guess, nowadays, particularly that
Yeah.
everyone's kind of dialing into places rather than meeting. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, any connection that you make is valid in some way. And I think the other aspect to this is that you're always learning new things. So even if they don't have budget, you'll get an idea of what's going on. So the more the point I'm getting at here is you will understand through every conversation you have, you'll understand more and more what's actually going in the space that your clients are in. And that's got value in it for sure.
Yeah, I agree. The amount of times that when I was in Hoxo, where we like I pitched someone, they didn't have budget, they loved the product, they could see it how it worked, it was great, da, 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 da. And the amount of then deals that I closed off the back of just keeping in touch or nurturing them 6 months
Mm,
later, bang, get a random email, right, we're ready to go, just because you're keeping in touch. So, yes, potentially we all focus on new biz and like that's the golden egg, and we want to get new biz, but also you probably got a lot of data or information internally that, step back and say, are we actually utilizing the deals that we've already spoken or the people that we've already spoken to? What could potentially we do from them, but that always comes back to the initial qualification of a prospect, speaking to them, getting to know them, uncovering sort of what they're doing in the business, what their needs are, whatever it may be. But I'd be quite interested to ask you, from a deal perspective, because
yeah,
there's a lot of SDRs going out there. So we understand the economics environment. We understand it's a bit different. There's a few key information you give there where people could change the way they do things and look at it from a human perspective
mm,
and helping rather than just ramming your product down people's throat. Which I'm not saying everyone listening to this is doing. If you are, stop.
yeah.
Um, but in terms of in terms of qualification of deals, like in your opinion, like what actually makes up a deal? Like what would you say like the core blocks are for SDRs once they get to like
Yeah.
what's the makeup?
Are you referring to sort of what is an opportunity, or what's an actual project? Because I see this in a number
Hmm,
of ways. I mean, there are
yeah.
um, there are various methodologies that everybody's obviously familiar with, and so on. But I mean, look, you mentioned SDR, so let's put it in that context. I mean, if you're looking for an opportunity to help someone, which is what an opportunity is, then ultimately, in terms of a qualified, valid one that is worth resources and time right now, um,
Mm,
they should have at least three or four factors ultimately. But you should know who is their budget for what we're talking about here. Is there a person responsible? Is there a need? I.e., is there a use case that you can actually deliver on? That's the other point, because
mm,
otherwise these relationships won't last if you can't provide what you say you can provide. So is there a need, and when is this going to happen by? So um, budget, key person or key buyer, a timeline, and a specific use case, I would say, are probably the main factors that you should at least be
yeah.
qualifying for. But this is not, I mean, a lot of people talk about this from the perspective of um, do this so that you're not wasting your time and all this. I look at it from a different perspective. I say you must know these things, otherwise you won't actually provide something of value. So, and if you're not doing that, forget about that client staying with you, right?
Yeah.
So there are plenty of companies that will do deals, but those clients won't stay, and that's when you're getting churn and all sorts of problems, bad reputation. And that's really something you don't want. So,
Mm.
so yeah, those are, I guess, the four sort of underpinning, for me at least, what defines an opportunity. But if you're talking about what defines a client, it's a little bit more than that, I guess, which is sort of what leads into that next stage of really then deeper dive consultancy, understanding specifically use case, looking at the ROI of the project, how can you deliver the maximum that's possible, and really what's the long-term plan with them. I mean, is it just, okay, we'll solve this and then but goodbye? I'm assuming not. So so where does it go from there? I mean, where are the other areas that you could potentially assist them with as well? So there are many stages to this, and we're
Yeah.
now getting into more account management, but
Yeah.
yeah, I hope that makes sense. So
No, it does. It does. And the reason why I was asking that question is, even when I was in recruitment beforehand, looking at like the CRM and system, and if we're looking at, you know, qualifying clients to the point where they're good leads, right? They may not buy there and then. That's fine. We can nurture them. We can speak to them. We can do whatever so that they buy later. Fine. But one of my pain points or one of my biggest pet peeves was like a database that wasn't clean, or
yeah,
it had a load of just data leads in there that just weren't qualified. And what that then ends up doing is like, it just like you spend all this time either trying to clean it up, or B,
yeah,
you're marketing to them or nurturing them, and it's just like it's not going anywhere, which can be quite frustrating because you're putting time and effort into it and
yeah,
not getting nothing back. So if we're in this economic environment, we're going out, we're trying to win new business, new opportunities.
mm,
Great, cool. There's a few things we can do there, but just make sure once we get hold of them, that's what I was asking about the
yeah,
core blocks of what you find.
yeah.
What, did that resonate with you?
I
Have
know
you
what
been
you're
through
going to
that as
say.
well?
Yeah. Absolutely. Look, clean house, clean mind. Okay.
Yeah.
If you are not organized with your information, you don't really know where you are. Okay.
Mm,
Your map will be upside down and you won't have a clue. So
mm,
you need to, this is the one thing everybody hates, right? Is like, put it in CRM, make sure keep good notes.
mm,
But honestly, it will help you in the future. I mean, if you have good information, you'll be able to provide a better service to your client, and your client will stay with you.
yeah.
If you have a mess, then they won't, because you will miss things, you'll forget things, and that will lead in the long term to unhappy clients, which nobody wants,
Mm,
particularly during a recession.
yeah.
So yeah, exactly. So so I think the point is as well, there's a tendency, going nicely back to what we were discussing before about sort of negativity and positivity, and all of
Mm,
this sort of stuff, and belief in your product and so on. If you are not, if you're not kind of keeping good information that can be then reviewed, you may think you are somewhere where you're not, and that's a real risk. So you may, the biggest challenge is sort of forecasting. Well, we have an opportunity, where is it going? You may feel good about it, but when you go and look through your information, there might not be that much there. So just because you've got a good relationship with them, that's great, but you might not
mm.
understand enough to actually provide exactly what they
Right.
want,
Yeah.
which then will lead to a negative result as well. So I think this kind of really keeping a clean house, and I'm referring specifically to how much you're doing in terms of notes, but also if you're correctly sort of storing that in a way that the organization can see and use, then you have to keep a clean house. That's it. It's no other way to put it.
Get the dead wood out.
Get the dead wood out, exactly. And look, and again, we all say that, but again, that you need an accurate picture of where you actually are with your clients, not just in order to keep the projects on track, but also to know whether or not your organization has enough opportunities to get to where it needs to be. So
Yeah.
that's definitely important. And that visibility, by the way, actually helps you understand your clients more, right? So imagine
Mm.
a situation where everybody is accurately inputting information into the CRM. That's used by people, don't even realize that information should be and can be used by your product team, right? If they
Mm.
notice, there's an unusual weighting towards a certain use case that you provide for,
Mhm.
that gives you a bit of a hint. You know, maybe that should impact your product roadmap. I don't know, but it's just an idea. But the point is that without a view accurately of where you stand, you won't be able to help your clients. You won't be able to develop your business, and you may be shocked at the end of the year that you're not where you should be. So I
Yeah.
think that's probably an accurate summary of
No, great. Like
but
one of my things that I really needed to work on a couple of years ago was forecast prediction,
mm,
because I'm quite optimistic. Everything's coming through, every deal's coming through, everyone's great, everyone's happy. Let's have a laugh, right? And the reality is that that's not true. Um, so I had to like really work on clarifying and really getting under the bonnet as to uncovering, is this the right product for them? If it's not, like, don't be afraid to say, listen, this is um, or if it is, then really making them understand how it can actually help them. But yeah, so forecast prediction, yeah, 100 grand's coming through. Nope, 20
yeah,
grand's coming through. Which comes into the qualification of the deals, right? And those core blocks. Because if you're really qualifying people to the right standard, the database is clean, you've got the dead wood out and every clean mind, etc. Then you're just building like a roadmap for you to be successful. Potentially not now, but like as you go, and the more you build, it's like Will Smith. What's his famous quote? He says, "You don't go out and build a house. You go out and you get one brick, and you place one brick and you place it perfectly. Then you go get another brick and you place it perfectly.
yeah.
And soon, brick by brick by brick, then you've built a wall,
Yeah,
built a house."
absolutely. Well, and
Which,
that's absolutely true. And I think look, I would put it this way: I- if you buy a lottery ticket just because you think you're going to win doesn't mean you will. And this is the reality: is that unless you know something, it
mm.
might not be how you feel, and that's why data is important. So forgive the crude example, but well, I'm not Will Smith, so I'm not going to cut you.
Nah,
Uh, but you see, but this is the point, right? Is that and you have to remember that what happens you are in sales, you're the front end that's dealing with clients. So it's not just about you, actually. It's about you achieving your goals as an individual. Yes, it's about the sales operation, delivering the revenue that's needed for the company. But other people rely on that information as well within the organization, such as product, such as marketing, my goodness, finance. So all of this stuff, it's kind of we all need to be realistic at the end of the day in order to actually achieve something, rather than just I've got faith it will happen. You definitely need faith; it's crucial, but
yeah,
don't you should validate sort of where you stand, um, and share that with others. I would add as well with other departments by inputting information correctly.
yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't all happen in one go, and but also monitoring where you are in those stages, and are you actually at that stage in reality,
Mm.
or do you feel you're at that stage in a cycle, with an opportunity, let's say that also can be tested, let's say with the right data. So it's important to keep that clean house in order to forecast accurately. um, and
Absolutely.
by the way, that will also help with these challenges that companies are having at the moment with raising capital. I mean, they big risk is particularly sort of, I know it was a bit of a phenomenon last year, but companies that will go to try and raise this year that think their numbers will be what they thought they were going to be a few months ago, they won't. So
Yeah.
so that's it's important from a number of perspectives, but I think look, the takeaway from this is getting an
Mhm.
honest view of where you are and making an iterative, or a staged plan, which will be iterative, but in order to get you to where you need to be. If you start the year in January and you say by December I want to be, at point B, there will be a number of there's a lot of months in between that, and if you're halfway through the year and you're confident, that's fine. But as you get towards the end, that illusion that you may have got because you felt a certain way about certain projects can cause issues. Whereas if you have a system in the business, usually done through a CRM, where you're accurately reflecting the situation by using various tools, probably as well, in that CRM, but ultimately inputting the information, then that will mean as you go through that year, you'll know exactly where you are, and that will actually help you define what you need to do. So that when you get to that December point, or April, depending on which country you're in, and end of financial year and so on, that will then actually enable you to make sure that you do get there. There's nothing worse in this business than getting to the end of the year thinking you would, on the route, and then it doesn't happen.
Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. That's it.
So
Yeah.
that's a problem. Yeah.
Which comes back to the point you made about data, because we all know, and people watching this will know, data is obviously key for the business. If you're running a multi-division company, we did it where, even how the channels of people coming into the lead flow or the deal flow, right? So if people are coming from LinkedIn, or if they're coming from a webinar, or if they're coming in from the newsletter or the value prop or just outreach, like even recording that data, that's crucial for marketing, because if they've got marketing budget to spend, it's like, okay, well, we're getting 30% of our leads more from X. Okay, let's double down on spend on there, because that's where we're getting more. So yeah, data, which then comes back to then the actual qualification and speaking to your customers, ones that you're already working with, also new ones, open up the bonnet, which then funnels into understanding, rather than just ramming your product down someone's throat. Like we said, it's really going out there and helping.
Absolutely. And look, and by the way, I mean, there's another level to all this, because if we can look at aggregate information across 20 or 30 people all going out into the market, if we're able to see that certain people are having success doing a certain thing, and it might be that they're better in planning for the delivery, that's crucial as well, very overlooked, the part after the contract in sales. So if they're better at planning for that, in terms of collecting information to make that smoother, better client service, it might be that they're better in generating opportunities. Whatever they're better at, we'll see that, and then we'll be able to see what are they doing differently, which can be shared with other people. So if you have a team of 30 people and everyone goes off in their own route, they all just report back what they feel about their deals, it's not going to work. So you need to have a view, and this is where really I think there's a bit of misunderstanding in the sort of sales communities, that people think that, oh, it's just a reporting tool to my boss, right? I put it in there, he can see. What about that? And by the way, if that's how you're using your CRM, you should give back to your team, because they need to understand that it's not just for management, it's actually for them as well. So it has to be, and that's actually an interesting. This is something that I say to a lot of my consulting clients is, look, you face this challenge, you're not getting clear reports, you're not getting this from your team. It's because they're not getting anything from it, right? If they don't get something, if it's not working for them, if it's just a laborious task that they do just to stop you from sending them prompts and emails and nagging them, it's not doing something for them. And that's why. And that's why they find it a cumbersome administrative pain, rather than actually something that enables them. And this is the whole misconception about sort of things like CRM or prospecting tools and all of this stuff. Is it's got to work for them in the same way that it works, for you from a management view. So actually that's a proven way to get it to be, the uptake, or whatever you want to refer to it as, within the organization, the sort of, the accuracy of use, or the propensity to input data accurately, promptly into the CRM or whatever tool you're using, it drastically increases if they feel they're getting something from it. So, I've seen a number of things. I've suggested a few things to some of the clients based on their needs, but it has to be something that gives back to them. And that's one great way to do it, is take best practices and make them available in there, so that it helps people. It helps the team actually go out there and get those opportunities and do those deals. So so that's one way. And of course, the other way is just, look, from a selfish perspective, if you're onboarding new people, all the resources are there. So
Yeah.
It makes it makes them more self-sufficient as well. And by the
Yeah.
way, from a different perspective as well, that's a manager's job, is to make them help them be successful. Um,
Yeah.
so use that tool to do it as well, right?
Yeah, if people are not if they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. If they don't see the value in actually doing it, they're not going to do it. Like hands down. Like I've been in that situation. It's just like even the data cleanup, I'm just like because the board's task and like I didn't really see. And you're right. If people are sitting there using their CRM tool to negatively reinforce why people are not hitting their goals and stuff like that, of course they're not going to
Yeah.
do anything with it. They're going to probably not even use it. So yeah, if you are doing that, stop.
Yeah. I mean, you see,
um,
the other interesting way to get people to input data is, and this is, look, I think everyone agrees it's important to have data, right? I mean, the
sure.
more the better in every aspect of your business, really. But
Mm,
another way to do that is not just to kind of feed back um, assistance or benefits to them for doing that. The other way is to make inputting data part of the process. So if they're wanting to advance a deal to another stage and book a demo with a pre-sale specialist, for instance, that could be done through the CRM, which means that they
yeah,
have to then move it. So it's kind of um, it's making data not just a cumbersome management thing that you have to do. It's making it actually the opposite. It's making it something that helps them and just happens naturally throughout the process. If you
yeah,
don't make them use that, if you don't encourage people to do things through the system that's recording the data, it's also kind of increasing the task, because if there's no incentive for them to use that system throughout that journey, they'll get to the end and then they have to go back and retrospectively add all these steps, which is,
which takes more time.
I mean, that's even bigger a problem. So
Yeah,
even more
which
work,
is
right?
and nobody wants to do
And
it,
no one
right?
wants to do that.
We,
And I understand why, because you should spend your
yeah,
time efficiently, which means talk to clients and solve problems. Don't sit there just doing data entry, right? No, nobody wants to. And even I, when I look at it, when I look at, or in fact anybody out there, I mean, if you're running a sales team and you're
yeah,
asking people to spend their time doing that, there must be part of you that sits there and thinks, I'd rather you be talking to a client, right? You need the data,
mm,
but really, what's their most effective use of time? So this leads me to my next point, which is, if you can automate things, do. Because you know be the best in your field, do what you're meant to do, don't as much. And this is actually understood by the industry, right? There's many products out there
mm,
that help you do this, but focus on what you're best at, or focus on helping clients solve problems. That's it.
mm.
And everything else, automate as much as possible. But if you're asking them to do something that isn't that, make sure they're getting something back for it, because otherwise,
Yeah, and actually understand it. Yeah.
it's actually it's just it won't work otherwise. But
No, absolutely. Just to add to that point, if you do need data, it's working out what data do you actually need. So I'll take a marketing slant, for example. So in our pipeline, what we used to do is any deal that was created, you had specific information that you had to input for that deal before that deal would be accepted. And
mm,
that was then make it simple, right? So yeah, you've got an open text field and stuff that can write stuff, but you got drop downs. Like
yeah,
what industry are they in? What do they do? Where they're from, etc., etc. Then when it goes from initial conversation, discovery call, or to a discovery call or whatever, um, then another drop down box where then they have to put in more information based
yeah,
on the conversation, which then can lead back to that um, core building blocks of qualification of that deal, which
mm,
then in the end, it kind of forces them to actually do it because they need to put the deal to put in the pipeline to show what they're actually working
yeah.
on. So if you can automate it, great. But if you can't, that's just another way for doing that. But listen, loads of information there, loads of actionable stuff people can take away from
Yeah.
looking
And
at.
just on this point, sorry to interrupt
Yeah,
you, but just
that's
on this
okay.
point you mentioned there about industry segment, I mean, if you are selling to multiple industries, I mean, yeah, you can take two views on this. You could say, well, look, number one, when that lead is registered, that organization should select themselves what segment they're in,
Mm,
so that nobody even has to do this and it's automated.
sure.
But you can also take the other
Mm,
view and say to the staff, well, look, you select the segment, but then we'll configure the system to automatically bring up example use cases that you can share with them that we've done before. So then you don't have to search the library for them, right? Things like that.
Yeah.
So that way they're getting something back for doing it. And actually,
Yeah, that's
now an enabler. So just think, if I'm asking them to do something, what can I do to give back to actually make them more effective and help them save time, and be better, really. So yeah,
yeah,
just
absolutely. That's a great tip. That's a great tip. I'm sure there's definitely tools out there that people can go and use, and it'll just be like an automation trigger off the back of it, right? Should be,
I imagine I mean,
yeah,
most, even within the CRM, there must be sort of ways to configure that.
yeah, definitely.
So absolutely.
Good. Well, listen, I thought the conversation was great. Loads of actionable tips about how to think about the environment you're in right now. Okay. Yes, we're in a bit of a downturn. People are not spending, but then what are actually people, or what can you actually do, and how should you be thinking when going out and prospecting?
Yeah.
Then qualification of deals, to then data, keeping your pipeline clean for sure. And then different ways to give back for input of data. So, mate,
Yeah.
wicked. I thought, yeah, really, really good. But you've been in sales for quite some time.
Yeah. So
So
look, just to add to your point before I come on to me, I mean,
yeah, go for it.
what I would say is, if you're going to take two things away from this, is one, be proud of what you do, and that means keep yourself organized, keep professional,
Yeah.
record as much data as you can to make yourself better, and focus on your clients and focus on helping them. If you do those two things, everything else will just happen, right?
All
That's
into
it.
place. Yeah, absolutely, mate. Good nuggets of information there for sure, and do it. So you've been in sales for quite some time, and what would you say out of everything you've ever done in terms of sales? Like, what's been the biggest highlight of your career so far?
Highlight, positive, or biggest changing moment?
Yeah,
Interesting.
whatever you want. Take it whatever direction you want. Positive or biggest win, biggest highlight, biggest achievement, whatever you feel.
Sure. So I mean, I think what I would say, to be honest, biggest highlight would probably be the biggest change in the way the industry works for me. So we've gone over COVID with, I mean, just the culture change of how it's now normal and acceptable to do video calls.
Yeah.
What I find interesting with that actually is that, if you offer somebody the opportunity to go and sit down properly and actually, why don't we have lunch, or why don't we go for coffee? That's no longer a standard. That's now a plus, right? Everyone's gone
Yeah.
online. So what used to be normal is now actually a positive for relationship building, I find. So for me, I guess biggest highlight is just sort of how the way people do things has changed. And again, if you're it's now sort of, it's also the remote working has also led to ironically, because we're going to go back to talking about CRM now, but has ironically led to people actually being more willing to use cooperative tools, because they now need them to get things done, because they're no longer you can't
Yeah.
just go to the other end of the room and talk to someone about something. You now got to use the collaborative technology that everyone's input, which has been a good thing for data,
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, it's just a bit. I mean, look, it's probably true for a lot of people that COVID was quite a highlight in their life, but in terms of change. But those are the things that I find, is that actually some people appreciate the old ways of doing things, and that's now a positive, not a requirement. And just the remote working has made recording data a lot more of a normality, I guess. You're not,
I agree.
it helped in a sense with that, but doesn't mean you shouldn't give back in the way we discussed.
No, true.
Now means that that's the case. Yeah. So
Yeah.
and
Go on to
also,
the,
what it's also done is it's brought in this reality that you need to focus on results, and that you need to focus on actually, it's almost like, because there's no, I think that with the remote working, the day's less defined now. So it used to be, I get in the office at a certain hour and I leave at a certain hour. It's now less defined, and everyone's more focused about the result, which, I mean, time will tell, but I would imagine that will lead to more kind of a productivity focused organization, rather than this old phrase, put the hours in. Well,
yeah.
what have you done with them? That sort of, actually, and
Use
this is
the
where,
time.
that's it. And if you going back to what I was saying before, if you really do care about what you do, and you really do care about your clients, then that's going to show, and it should in I guess this kind of new environment, produce a better picture for you.
Absolutely, mate. I think times have changed for the better. I think more people are more efficient, more productive. I mean, there's a wealth of, we could probably do a full new podcast just on different tech that's out there that can help people. But, gone are the days now of Rolodexes, where you've got like,
Yeah,
100 different
all the numbers.
plans,
Mm.
Glenn Ross, in those days. So, good. No, really appreciate you being on the show today, Alex. Been a real pleasure to sort of pick your brains and understand sort of from your perspective how things are changing and what people should be doing. So, say someone is listening to this and they want to contact you and reach out to you, like how should they reach out to you? How should they get in touch? And feel
Absolutely.
free to plug in,
Yeah,
what you're
absolutely.
doing, etc.
Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. It's a great open community. So do that. Message me. I'm happy to offer my 2 cents on whatever you're looking at. So so for sure. Yeah,
Awesome. Well, that is us for today. I really appreciate it, Alex, and I will see you all on the next one. Bye
absolutely.
bye.
Aaron, thank you.
Cheers, Alex. Bye now. That was episode there with Alex Bellon. Love that conversation. Really insightful information. You can definitely tell he's been in sales for a long time, and the wealth of information that he was given, loads of actionable tips and stuff you should be doing from a psychology point of view, understand your prospects, how to go out and get in the position where you can collect data, not just saying we've got an amazing product you should buy, but actually going out and genuinely care about the people you want to do business with and how can you help them and how can you really understand their business that puts you in a position that you keep that client for longer rather than just that relationship potentially fading away. And we talked about, the database, which we all know is a bit of a pain point of inputting information. But how do we make it fun? How do we make it super valuable for the SDRs to actually put information in? We all know data is king. We all know understanding the data can help businesses make better decisions for the future. So if we know that, then what process are we putting around from automation, from them inputting deals into the pipeline, but actually having them to be able to put in specific information that's going to help the business with information with data to make better decisions down the line. So I don't want to reiterate again what we just spoke about, but yeah, really, really enjoyed that conversation with Alex. Obviously, reach out to him if you think you want to pick his brains a bit more. But if you are sitting there thinking that you would love to be on the show, feel free to reach out to me, just connect with me on LinkedIn, drop me a message. Always open to having a conversation with people out there that want to talk all things sales, ups, downs, lefts, rights, stresses, the mindset, everything. So that is it for today. Thanks for listening. I will see you